Prepare for main engine. Start.
From the trenches of motorsports and Gearhead Central, this is RealTuners Radio, your all-motor, boosted, and nitrous-fed hour of power. Now, here's your hosts, the Reverends of RPM, the Faction of Traction, John Bewley, Scott Clark, Bill Fowler, Scott Evans, Mark Dahlquist, Mike Perduto, James Short, Tom Sewell, Brian Barnhill. This is RealTuners Radio.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to RealTuners Radio. It is Wednesday, of course, March 3rd, 2021. And we're actually one whole year into 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Welcome back. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. Yeah, looks like everything's working. Jason, right on. So our guy's working remote tonight. Everybody is thrashing and busy, but we all wanted to do a podcast. A couple of cool things to talk about. Number one, the EPA crackdown. A lot of people have seen the videos going around that the guy from Lund, who are very popular in large scale factory Ford ECU tuning guys, and they do great work, by the way, great work. They apparently had a visit by the EPA. So there's some concern about that and what was going on there. And Mr. Lund made a very good and informative video on that. We should talk about that. Also, we had lights out. I only assisted with 2 cars, and it was basically just look at a data log a couple times. So I didn't really do much for lights out this time around because I'm busy with the other project we'll talk about. But we were able to get Mr. Greg Schmidt from Bad Influence Garage, if you follow his YouTube channel. So anyway, Greg's here to chat with us a little bit tonight and talk about his experience at Lights Out. And man, this guy, they're creeping up. So their first time out on radials, I think we'll talk about it here in a minute, but I believe it was their first time out on radials, and are actually what they're really doing is smoking up a carburetor, big blow through carburetor numbers. So we'll have to talk about that and get some details from Greg. Impressive combo for a first outing on radials. Let's see. What else did we want to talk about tonight? Oh my God, James, our boy James bought a C4 Corvette. He's not going to run his video tonight, so we won't have to see if he also bought New Balance shoes and tall knee socks and what are those jean shorts, or what are the Corvette guys wear that drive C4 Corvettes? But anyway, James bought a C4 vet.
What's up?
Yeah. Oh, and a reminder, Justin Brumley, take your trash out. Let's get started. Okay, man. How are you guys doing?
Good. Pretty good.
Bill, talk to us. Tell us how was your day? Sorry. I caught him in the middle of dinner.
Thank you.
Nice background. Good Lord. He's doing good now.
Yeah, that's a shot from my backyard.
James, are you out in your shop? Looks good. We should be having a class this time of year.
I know, right?
I know the weather was so nice today. I thought about that. I saw the pictures that your wife put up, and I was like, oh man, their place is this time when the weather's nice, that place is absolutely awesome to have class.
Yeah. Today it was about 65 degrees, so it was perfect day today.
Perfect. So anyway, oh man, look at all these guys signing up on YouTube. What's going on, everybody? Dyno operator at 417 last April. That was Mo Lonis from LSX Killer Custom Calibrations up in Kansas City. Those guys are easy to find. Hit me up, message me on Facebook. Mr. Peabody, what's going on? There's a bunch of people signing up here tonight we haven't seen in a while. Apologies for not having a show as frequently as we should be. I'm totally thrashing on the turbine engine thing. Our scheduled dyno appointment has been pushed off for 3 weeks in a row, and apparently the word is go Monday. So I don't know if we'll have a show on Wednesday. Next week, if we do, it'll be off-site remote. But Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm supposed to be on the dyno with the gas turbine deal for the Bonneville car. So I'm thrashing for that. But Greg, let's talk to Greg first. I want to get his take on this latest iteration, the 12th iteration of Lights Out. So you guys made it back home now. Everything, you made it safe and everything.
Yeah, we're back home up in Brainerd, Minnesota. It was well, it was 40 below here, and then a week later we were down at Lights Out, just parking the trailer and everything, and it was 60 above. So in 1 week we had a 100-degree swing. So, but just to get ready for that event, we had big propane heaters inside our enclosed trailer to heat it up, so we could actually pack the trailer and get everything ready and everything up here. So that was to show some of our dedication just to go to that.
Yeah, I saw that you were posting picture. Dad was like thawing out the diesel. He had the filters out or whatever. He was having to do that bullshit. Oh God, I hate that.
Yeah, we had a motorhome 2 days before we left. We found a cracked manifold on our motorhome, so we had to scrounge up because my truck would normally tow it has us transmission slipping, so we had to figure out a way to get down there because I already had like crew going down and I had all this stuff going down, like people had tickets and all of that, and I'm like, I can't not go. So we figured it out, and one of our really good customers said, hey, you just did all this stuff to this truck for a tow, just take it, have it, so that was really nice of them, and we ended up making it down there, and really glad we did make it down. So
well, that's good, man. I mean, once you got there, things went pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. So for the people that don't know, we have an odd combination. You can check us out on our YouTube channel, Bad Influence Garage. We have a full build series on there that we called The Road to Radials,
which is done really well, by the way. It's one of the few channels, like, I subscribe to it and I actually watch it because it's concise. Actually, your editing is kick-ass. You do a good job.
Can we get these posted in the chats?
Yes, we can definitely share that. He does sometimes. He usually tags me when he releases a new video, but definitely go sign up at Bad Influence Garage on YouTube. But it's worth watching because it's actually, there's an educational bent to it that I like.
Yeah, we like to teach people, or show you something that you may not see. Like we did the rebuild of the Hemi that's in our car, and so we tore everything down and showed everything as we tore down. And like the drain backs, how they're built into the block and things like that, people don't really get to see.
Yeah, that was all cool shit to see, especially if you're not a guy that gets to work on billet motors and stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So we wanted to do that, but when we got down to Georgia, it was our first time ever putting a drag radial on. We normally run big tires and wheelie bars, but everybody kind of said, go try radials. And then when it got down, I bet you won't put radials on it. Then it was kind of like, okay, I'm going to do this and prove these people wrong, or I'm going to completely fail. So let's go. I got
to talk to Greg after the second pass he struck the tires or whatever. Just I could tell, I was like, oh, radials sound like a great idea.
Yeah, that was.
But it turned around quick after that, though.
Yeah, we struck the tires the first 4 hits and trying to get it figured out, and I was getting frustrated and down on myself because we went down a few years ago for some outlaw X32 stuff, and ran down there and had issues. And you good there?
Yeah, I'm good. Go ahead. Sorry. My video freaks out every 30 minutes.
Yeah. So we went down for Outlaw 632. We went down on a 3310.5W a couple years ago, and we struggled our butts off. So I was like, oh, great, we're going to have this happen again. And talking with Scott and then another couple people that were helping us do some tuning, we got it figured out. And our first full pull down the track on radials was our 5th hit on the track or on radials. And we went a 434 at 169.
Yeah, nice. You guys got some clangers for showing up to that event for the first time with this combo. That's good, though. Yeah, That's a solid performance, all things considered. Very impressive.
But for people who, like I was saying, who don't know on there, we have a 2010 Camaro 528 cubic inch Hemi. It's got a 118 millimeter turbo and an APD blow through carburetor. So that's where people they steer away and they go, it's got a what? Like even Brian Loans is going, what? How do you spell that? So they're giving me a lot of.
We've made an EFI snob out of Loans a little bit. He's a guy, but he digs the EFI. But yeah, so hilarious.
But yeah, so we went down to just kind of go as quick as we could, and then we started getting quicker and quicker, realizing, hey, we're coming up close to having the world record for blow through carburetor door car. Like we're getting real. So
which is badass, you know what I mean? Especially right out of the gate and doing it on radials. Not bad.
Yeah. Q4 we ran our fastest pass during qualifying, went a 426, 178 mile an hour. So
So how much boost? You guys are actually pretty light on boost for that mile an hour too. How much boost did you end up running? Can you share that? I mean, I know.
Yeah, you know. You saw the logs.
I guess I should shut up, but it was not okay. I'm just gonna say not a lot of boost. Not a lot of boost at all. No, this thing's making a lot of power out of what they're doing. I mean, dude, some of those cars will run 70 pounds of boost in that environment.
When we went that 178 426 at 178 had 30 pounds of boost in it,
which is this
not much.
No, especially not on that combo. You can run that 1,000 passes like that.
Yeah. So we qualified number 27. That was one of our goals. Go down here, figure out the radial tire, and if we qualify for the event, that's a good weekend for us.
Right.
So we did all of that. We got it down the track. We qualified. I could have packed up first round, gone home. Whatever. We're good. We did what we came to do. But we're like, okay, let's run first round. And we got paired up with Melanie Salemi, who has, been deep 50s, in their combo, big blower, screw blower, Hemi deal. And I was like, well, okay, so we're going home first round, but let's load a tune in this. And, we're going to have a good track. Like, if Melanie's up on the line, they're going to give her a good track, which means we're going to have a good track. So, we brought the power in, I don't know, probably half a second to 0.6 of a second quicker. Like, it was, we smacked that some bitch right over the head. Yeah. We still left the line a little soft, but room for improvement. Went 417 at 181 mile an hour.
Yeah, nice.
And that put us.
I was most impressed with your short times. Actually, you guys weren't making a big deal about it, but I was like, man, they're homing in on it quick. Your 60s were by no means bad news. I don't know if we were those either.
That's fine. That's common knowledge there. So we were going 108 to 111 60 foot, very almost every pass. We were starting to get that figured out, but we just had to figure out how to get it to leave the line with more boost. That was really tough to figure that area out. And then once we started to creep up on it and figured out the tricks to make that happen, that totally, was an eye opener. This was also our first time on Holly. We switched everything over to a Holly Dominator system to control, the ignition and outputs.
It's doing everything except the fuel. Right?
It does.
Cool.
It does.
And it
does everything but the carburetor is what I tell people, because auxiliary fuel systems that have to come on there because we've maxed out the carburetor already.
Yeah, it's even doing that. Yeah.
So what we did is we're tuning off of the EGT for that, and we found our hottest EGT, and then we set everything on there on the outputs from the Dominator. So when it would reach a certain temperature, it would turn on kit 1, and then when it would reach another higher temperature, it'd turn on kit 2. As we're going on track to keep everything down, and it got really smooth. And even our safeties were set up on that.
Nice. Very good,
it was
man.
So cool.
That goes to show, and then the advanced table stuff on Holly is, God, it's so hard to beat. It's not hard to beat. You can beat it with a Haltech for the same money you can smoke it. But again, the Haltech's a little more of a science fair project. These guys learned the Holly from scratch. You didn't really get a lot of help, man. I kind of expected to be asked more questions and stuff, but I think I took like 20 minutes worth of phone call or something, and that was it. You got her all figured out.
Kind of dive into there. And if we want to talk about, since it's the RealTuners podcast, if there are people out there that are looking at trying to figure out, should I, go to, either you're using HP tuners in a factory ECU, should I go to like the, what are the Terminator? Like, do it. Like the amount of data logging and everything that's on there and stuff you can figure out.
Yeah, we figured out. Terminator is badass. Right.
Yeah. The biggest part of the way that I look at tuning is there's two different types of tuners. You got the tuner that's they put it on the dyno, then they make the power, and you know it's safe, everything's good, and there you go.
And the car won't start tomorrow morning.
Well, or then you have the or then you have the tuner that tunes at the track to make the car go down the track.
Yeah.
So there's making power and power management. And if you've got a guy that you take it to your dyno guy, he's going to tune it and make everything good, but you need to have that data logger in there to know how to make that car go down the track now.
Yeah.
And
by the way, Lee Sebring is giving you shit. Who runs a blow-through setup? He said. Sorry.
Oh God,
love that guy. We need to get him on here. I just
absolutely
all right, Lee, get ready for your invite, Lee, if you got time. He's kind of a big player. I kind of feel like I hate bugging the big dogs, but yeah, I'd love to have him on here. But anyway, that's cool, man. So yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, it's just learning that how to use your data logger and what's happening. and you can anything that you're trying to trigger for an output or input or anything like that. I was able to see exactly when everything was coming on and verify it and everything on there. What the stuff I had before with the MSD grid, I mean, I'd have been in left field, and there's no way to gone this fast. That's quick, you know.
Yeah, it was cool. You were able to home in on stuff really fast, and you guys were. I mean, you and your pops have talent, but you guys were first-time users at this stuff. I mean, you know how to read the manuals and stuff and get them hooked up. But still first-time users, but guys who knew how to make who are mechanically very solid. You guys homed in on that shit quick, which was good to see.
Yeah, thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah,
go ahead, Bill.
Oh, I was just going to ask you a couple of questions, but finish your thought there.
Oh no! So that the Holly software, there are some tricks to finding things that are in there, but it's forward. Once you learn it, I mean,
yep.
What I've noticed going from a very I will say rudimentary, like you get an MSD box type of a deal, and you just get some timing control, to now you can go. Hey, you want it to turn stuff on or do this or do that, and the safeties. You're limited by your imagination with like advanced tables and everything in there. Like you can go and go, oh, I want these two things to happen off of this one thing happening or this or that, and there's so much stuff you can do in there. It's really eye-opening. Once we get this record that we're chasing with the blow-through deal, I know that when the fuel injectors go on this car, it's gonna be a bad motherfucker.
Oh, it'll be badass because we can wick it up 60, 70 psi if we need to in a pinch. If that thing will hook it out the back door, then you know what I mean. You got another 1,000, 1,200 horsepower waiting in the wings there on that combo. You're gonna be shot.
Yep.
That's badass,
start looking at lockup stuff.
I was just going to ask. So, is this a BAE or an AJE Hemi or somebody else's?
So this is a Keith Black block, and it's got billet Venny heads on it. So It is old stuff. This is stuff from like the 80s, 90s that I'm using.
Right. Yeah.
It just flows really well. We've taken it on there, but it's a bigger stroke. You see a lot of those BAEs, Alan Johnson stuff right now. They're running like a 4.15 stroke. We're up at 4.5 inch stroke still, and to do that. So we don't. Most RPM I turned, I went through the stripe at 8,000 on one pass.
Cool. And then you said it's a 2010 Camaro. So you mentioned lockup converter. So obviously an automatic, not a Bruno or some such. So it's a.
No, he doesn't have a lockup yet, right? It's just isn't that a
400? No lockup right now. It's a turbo 400. It's a close ratio gear set on there, 1.25 inch input. What I was saying there, Bill, is once we start getting to the EFI, we can push more power. Then we'll start looking at a lockup setup on there.
Yeah, well, the converter told me that it's an automatic transmission. I was just trying to get.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No worries.
No, that's fine. Yeah, turbo 400. We're open. It's been published and everything out there. It's a close ratio gear set, 166, 134, 1-to-1 on there. That's a Cohen deal there. It was all built by BTE for us. They took care of everything, and it's a bad transmission. I love that thing. Like,
you need to do a webinar on like starting line ratio and running through all that stuff, gears, and all the stuff you went through, because I know you can watch an hour or so of your material and kind of catch on that. But I was thinking, man, if Greg would do his race car church thing you do on Sundays every now and then or whatever, if you would do another one of those and do something on like picking gears and all that shit for an event like that, for that particular application.
I did a race car church where we went over a lot of like the gear ratios and starting stuff on there, but we didn't talk about like if you're going to run a radial versus big tire. We could definitely
miss that entirely. I need to go check that one out then, because I was like, oh, God, I didn't know you did one of those. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, it was fun.
It sounds like fun. So then you said you ran out of carburetor, so turned on one kit and then a second kit. Presumably these are nitrous kits, or are they something else?
Extra fuel
kits. Or
it's actually
just fuel.
Supplemental alcohol.
Supplemental alcohol. What we did is the actual manifold we have on the car right now was a magnesium blower manifold. So it had everything drilled and tapped, 4 mechanical injectors in there, which is an 1/8 NPT. So I just took a nitrous nozzle that was 1/8 NPT, 2 deals on there. And I went, hey, look at that! Now I got 2 kits, and I just put them on that way. And then we trigger using the Dominator outputs to a relay to turn on the 310 orifice stainless steel solenoids and open up like that on there. And then that has its own fuel system. I call it a fuel system, but it has its own deal on there with a regulator And then that's boost reference as well. So if we turn on at a higher boost, it's going to obviously put more pressure to it and give us increased fuel.
So in a sense, these were fogger nozzles with the two sets connected to each one to make, well, two kits. Cool.
Yep. So you can kind of look at it as partial mechanical injection, but we didn't have a barrel valve or anything like that.
These setups tend to work good, though. That works awesome, man. I mean, it worked good for you guys right there. So that's
that. Well, I go back to like if you go to our YouTube channel, we have a slogan: hard work, ingenuity, and fast cars. And can I afford EFI right now? No, but I'm gonna run out of fuel. What can I do? I can do this, and I can control it with this. There's my ingenuity to make it work, and that's what we had to do.
Sounds like an awesome solution. But the plan, as you said, is to migrate to some sort of, conventional quote injectors.
Yes. Right now, the record we're chasing is actually we want to be the first 399 with a blow-through door car. So we were 0.17 off of that. And once we kind of hit that record, that goal that we want, then we'll start looking a lot closer and harder for the EFI.
You guys have an idea what your next event will be?
Oh, no, I'm taking that car is still in the trailer. I left it there. I was like, all right, I don't even want to touch it right now because I thrashed for 4 months to get there. So I'm going to work on my daily driver GTO, and I'm going to take my wife on a vacation to Las Vegas.
She deserves it.
She totally deserves it.
Crystal is a trooper.
Oh man, I was gone for 12 days. Yeah, that was, and she had to take care of the.
Put up with your shit.
No, I don't know how she still does, but but yeah, we're gonna start working on it again, probably beginning of April. We'll probably go to a couple of test events, some local stuff, and then we'll probably hit like Cash at the Creek up here in Minnesota.
Hell yes, that's a fun event. That's a good
event. Yeah, if you're local to the Midwest area, Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota,
or South everybody goes to Cash the Creek.
Oh man, that event has grown leaps and bounds in the last like 3 years. I mean, it's huge. It's a 1-day event. You show up, you get one test hit, and then you go into eliminations there. No time under the lights, and I mean the fans that are there are amazing. I mean, those are some of the best fans ever.
Right. Yeah, that's
so. Which track is that held at?
That was at Grove Creek. Nope, Grove Creek Raceway in just outside of Litchfield, Minnesota. So that's Aaron Van Heel is the guy that kind of helps put that whole thing on there with Grove Creek Raceway, Rick there, and they put on such an amazing event. It's one of my favorite events to go to every year. They hold 3 of them, and it's a 1/8 mile no time deal. And I don't know if we'll be able to get it at that track because that track's a little sketchy, but probably at Brainerd we'll put the radials back on and try to go after that over for a weekend, see if we can't hit that 3.
It's coming.
Are you prepared to talk at all about some of the chassis changes, or willing to talk at all about some of the chassis changes you made from going from a big tire to Radial versus the World 315?
Absolutely. Actually, we did an entire video on that, so I don't mind giving that information out at all. So a big tire, I mean, we can go the basics real quick on there. A big tire is going to want to squat the tire, get on that wheelie bar, and that wheelie bar is going to control the tire going down the track like that. And a radial car wants to separate the rear suspension and drive the tire into the ground. So that's why when you see them, they take off and the back end comes up like this, it goes out. So obviously there has to be chassis changes to make that happen. And that's all going to be on your pickup points that go from the rear end to the chassis itself, because that's what's driving the chassis to do something. It's either going to drive that chassis down to squat or drive that chassis up to separate on there. And that's kind of where a lot of the changes happen. You kind of want to get just your basic stuff on the rear end. You want to try to get a pretty wide spread on there between the lower bolt and the top bolt, and that's going to give you a lot of control and bite. You need your bar on the bottom to have an uphill rise, and it's all dependent upon what you have for a rear suspension. If you have a 4-link or a Fox body Mustang or a G body or something like that, they're all going to change on there depending on how you have everything. So some cars are going to want 1-inch uphill rise, some are going to want 3-inch uphill rise. Each one's going to be different. and then your top bar, you want that to come down, and where that picks up that front spread is going to be, you know, a lot of the control of that lever on there. How much of the chassis is it controlling? So you want to have something where you can control it nice and wide, but you don't want it, you know, where you don't have it, your angles correct. So that's the balance that we all play in that radial side of stuff.
Well, did you guys change shocks, or were you able to do it within the adjustments of the valving of the shocks you had on the car?
Okay, so the shocks we actually sent into Mark Menser, and we had Mark Menser do radial valving on the shocks. We had AFCO canister struts and canister rear shocks on there. 7-inch travel in the rear, and then the fronts are like a 3-inch travel deal. But they had to be completely redone. Everything there, Mark Menser and his crew there. If you see the big guy that's with Menser, his name is John. He's got a huge beard. That dude is super smart. Like, and he'll downplay it too. And he's like, "Nah, I'm just a hillbilly over here." But that guy's got, you know, a wealth of information.
Those guys
but
are badasses, yeah.
yeah. So, but yeah, we send it on there. Now when we go to put the big tires back on, I just said to call AFCO and go, "Hey, you know, the shocks I bought 2 years ago, I'm gonna need another set because I'm not gonna change them back." So we have to get another set there. Eric Saffel was on here roughly a year ago or something like that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's our main guy that we talk to and use there. He's super awesome. He knows a lot about the radials, but he knows even more about the big tire stuff. He's super good. But yeah, so we'll change. We have to change the shocks back and forth. Just the rate of control for your separation on there just wasn't going to be there for how much power you're trying to do and how fast you're trying to separate it and control that.
Makes sense.
That reminds me, if you need to turn your Holley shock travel data into velocity, hit me up. I'll show you. I can show you how to do that via software. There's a pretty simple way of getting velocity data out of that if your shock guys want to see it.
I'll do that. Thanks.
Yep. Let's see. The problem is the Holley data log viewer won't do a math channel to support velocity or you're basically the change in position over time. So it's you got to export the data into a CSV file and run it with a different log viewer, and then you can get that data. It's pretty cool though. It's handy shit.
Sorry, I'm checking some of the comments on here. This is great.
No, yeah, it's awesome. You're doing good, man. Thank you for the help.
Oh, no, not a problem. Lee Sebring, who runs a blow-through car.
I know, right? Nobody does, right? Nope, these guys do.
Lee Sebring, who goes to a radial race on 3310.5Ws.
Oh.
Yeah, I was that guy. I was that idiot, so, yeah. But other than that, yeah, it was a cool time, and, you know, I can't say enough about trying to, you know, switching to the Holley. That was, we'd never be able to do any of this without going to that. You know,
nice.
That safety's on there and everything like that. I'd have burnt that engine up 3 different times. So,
right, nice, very good, excellent, good to hear. We can let you go, man. I don't want to waste your time. You guys are busy. You got a lot going on, so go spend some time with the better half and relax a little bit. But we'll
all right.
We'll talk.
Cool. Thank you guys
for being on here.
Yeah,
That's
thanks,
awesome.
Greg. We appreciate it. Always check out Greg at Bad Influence Garage on YouTube. Definitely subscribe and click the like button, but click the subscribe button and get their notifications because their shit's always really good to watch. It's concise. It covers a lot of material and you learn with them. If they can't teach it to you, then you'll all learn it together. So it's actually pretty cool. But I like that show. So thanks again, buddy. We'll talk to you soon. Okay. Well, that was nice. So let's see here. What else is coming up? Hey, he brought up some events. He brought up Cash at the Creek. I wanted to talk about one of my buddies are putting on a streetcar race in Grand Junction, Colorado this June. We're giving them an early heads up, and I told him I would let people know because there's out in that part of the country, there's not a lot of tracks or events. But if you know Chris Dolan, he's been on Street Outlaws a couple times now. He's been to some of our classes, but him and his better half Stephanie are doing an event Saturday, June 5th at Western Colorado Dragway, otherwise known as Grand Junction, Streetcar Invasion. But check it out. I think it's already on Western Colorado Dragway's event calendar. But anyway, event June 5th out there should be pretty badass. We may actually go to that. We may be able to time that right. Anyway, let's see. What else is shaking? So let's talk about the EPA stuff for a minute. I don't know if you saw, but the guy from Lund, is it John? Or I don't know what his first name is.
John Lund II.
John Lund II. Okay, so well-known Ford tuner, and frankly, they're fucking really good at it. Pardon my French. We've been through some of the other remote tuner guys or email tuners or whatever for Ford applications, and Lund cleaned up a mess for us that was pretty kick-ass. On a reference from Alejandro, YOLO douchebag tuner, if you know him, he actually reached out. He's like, dude, let us fix this nightmare. And they did. It was awesome. But anyway, good dudes. But now is talking about, yes, indeed, here in the last month or so, they did get a visit from the, what do you call it? The
alphabet police.
The alphabet police or whatever. And I feel for the guy, you know, but I also, I mean, I'm hoping by now he's talked to an attorney, or maybe he did or not. I don't know. But, and also, number one, remember, we are not, except for Bill, we are not attorneys. So this should not be construed. Anything we say from here on out should not be construed as legal advice in any way, shape, or form. And anything Bill says, he's off the clock. So that doesn't count either. None of this is legal advice.
I do not have a lawyer-client relationship with anyone here. So anything I say is purely for educational purposes only.
So anyway, so EPA dropped by on Lund. Now the obvious scuttlebutt that's going on is now everybody knows why the N-Gage people went out of business so fast. I saw some stuff that concerned me a little, because I'm sure if you tune into prior podcasts where I rant about what's going on and how the EPA is doing their sweep, you know, I've mentioned that there's history of other companies, bigger companies, turning over customer lists and getting a small slap on the wrist, while their end users bear the brunt of the fines. And we've seen that at least twice now recently, and now it looks like we may have seen it a third time. And it's got some people up in arms that were using the N-Gage product, because he even said they came around specifically looking for N-Gages, which, if you don't know, it's a neat little deal that, believe it, what fits in a gauge pod, and it's a gauge, but it'll also reprogram your OBD2
it's a
late model 4
form
ECU.
factory, but it's a interface that has read-write capabilities, and it's basically like a little mini VCI interface or something like that.
So it triggered the delete device or the defeat device flag with the EPA. I mean, they're not stupid. These guys know exactly what's going on. But and also there was a Corey Willis post, kind of lost in the fray here, a few days before the Lund video came out. But Corey Willis, as you know, he's embattled with these guys from the diesel side, and he chose to fight, and he's being very open about getting his butt kicked in court, and maybe looking at the criminal side of things because he chose to fight back. But he was, you know, pointing out that, listen, these guys had Facebook and forum conversations I had from like 10 years ago with people, you know, pulling stuff up and making me look stupid. I mean, I've been there too. It's kind of funny. I basically never post anything on the internet that you don't mind answering to a judge or having played in a courtroom, right? Never post anything like that. But
you should get that tattoo.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm a horrible human being. Anyway, I guess what ended up happening there is Corey said that they pulled up a bunch of stuff. I was like, God, I don't even remember hardly seeing that. That was like 10 years old. So if you've left a history, that this is probably not the time to be flexing the 2009 Corvette you've tuned, you know, with your HP tuner stuff. I don't know, Bill, what are your thoughts on this? So what does a guy who's doing this stuff do right now? You pretty much have to take a defensive posture, right? I don't think PRI or anybody is going to suddenly have some breakthrough where all of a sudden EPA is just going to say, oh, you're right, we'll back off completely. So you have to take a defensive posture, it would be my guess. But do you abandon ship? Can you have a lawyer send a letter to companies that say, hey, don't release my name and my shit? You know, or do you go review your terms with those companies if you signed up and got credits and your name's tied to VIN numbers, things like that? What can people do? Is there any recourse?
The short answer, and again, we're not providing legal advice here, we're just providing some educational context, is that if you are a user of those products and you're concerned about potential legal liability, you have two routes. Well, three if you want to count, put your head in the sand and ignore it. But on a more proactive approach, it's either A, get out of that altogether. B, if you're going to continue to do it, you're doing it fully cognizant of the risk that anything you bought or used for that purpose, the company that sold it to you could be compelled to turn over those records and that information, more or less having a legal and monetary gun to their head. And then they can be coming to visit you next. The question is, how big are you and what are you doing and where are you doing it? And what is going on in that state? Because there are some conflicts from state to state between the Clean Air Act enforcement and what's been permitted in those states. And when you have a state that has, in a sense, either through inaction, what's known as collateral estoppel or equitable estoppel, meaning we've let you do it, we told you you can do it, and you relied on us to say that you can do it, and now you're going to come back and a federal agency is going to go after you. There's some defenses related to that. When I use the term defenses, I'm also using the term you're hiring a lawyer and spending a lot of money. So just be aware that in those states where you've been allowed to do this and the cars pass all the relevant laws in the state, even though federal laws preempt some state laws, there's been a lot of back and forth on that. It's going to vary by state is the short answer. So a state like California, no, you're just done, forget it. Other states, and there are 9 of them that follow the California rules broadly for their enforcement of emissions compliance and use of, non-use of defeat devices or technologies on emission controlled vehicle, you're in a tough place if you continue to do that work. If you stop doing that work as time goes by, the likelihood that they're going to come back after you decreases pretty dramatically. And right now they're going for scale. So that's why they're going after the companies and the manufacturers that make it, as opposed to, Joe's Garage and tune-ups. So, well, they must have got Scott. No.
See, it's really weird you mention this, because I have other friends and tuners that I know. They've actually done this stuff for cities and municipalities and police stations and other state agencies, which to me really opens another really wide question. You know what I mean? If these guys that are, government agencies are doing this, what does that help us out? You know what I mean? Like, do we bring them into the mix and say, well, the city electric company is also doing this with all their trucks? You know what I mean?
That defense is that other guy did it. So why, rob the bank? So why isn't it okay for me to rob the bank?
Well, of course. I'm just saying,
I get it.
Can you use that towards setting a precedence that, hey,
no.
they haven't enforced this shit in 40 years, and now you're going to start doing it? You know what I mean? You've let us go for so long, and now you're going to start,
Yeah, so the problem with the way those laws are written is there's not necessarily, it's like any number of laws on the books, and there are zillions, so that aren't enforced until they are, but that's not enough. Generally speaking, it needs to be something more like, if you were the guy that as a contractor did the work at the behest of the local city, so you were doing certain things to all of their diesel garbage trucks or something, you're going to have a much better argument. And at the moment, they are unlikely to go after those municipalities and cities and so forth. So you're going to see a separation of what and whom. Broadly speaking, you're going to see people selling stuff to consumers. Or doing the work for consumers. They're going to be the ones that have the issues.
So this is going to be like everything else, where they just turn their head for the government doing it and go after the.
You know what this is just like, and I'm just going to say, not that I had anything to do with it, but I was a casual observer. This is exactly like when they rounded up everybody who was hacking DirecTV in the early 2000s and the late 90s. If you were cloning H or HU cards, or, I've read about that's what they were doing. Basically, they were, for every one person subscribing to DirecTV, there were like 5 people who were just paying for cards. There were even companies out there, satellite companies, who'd come and install your dish, and then instead of you subscribing to the service, they would just come out and flash cards for you however often they needed to, send them out in the mail, whatever. It was such a racket. It was killing DirecTV. So they got the feds on the DMCA stuff or whatever it was to come around and sweep people. And they started off with the companies who had lists. They rated the companies that were selling the hardware. Some of them were in Canada. They even got assistance from the Canadian, with the RCMPs or whatever. They rated some places and extradited some records or whatever they have to do. And then they went around anywhere where stuff got shipped to anybody's shipping address, and a law firm would send out a letter, and then they'd send somebody out to visit your place and try to catch up with you and be like, hey, we want $1,500 per card and sign this thing and we'll make it go away. But they swept through, and I mean, they got everybody, every end user, damn near got caught. If not, you were lucky. But if you were selling this stuff, you were paying big fines. But it looks just like that to me. It feels the same way. They're working from the top down.
Yeah, and so the way that functions, and I defended some clients who had the deal where, like, you have a little restaurant and you had DirecTV or something, but you didn't subscribe to the NFL package. So you got the little chip that allowed you to get the NFL package. And in the example of one of those cases, so a guy walks in, and we're talking a burger and shake place in the middle of nowhere. And they had video of when the guy walked in and showed that, here's the football game on the TV, and what the agreement said, and he wasn't licensed to do that. And on that kind of what's called a per se violation, you're just in negotiations for what the settlement is. And the guy who walked in the door, who did the videotaping and basically set up the sting, the entrapment, whatever phrase you would like to use, gets a cut.
Oh yeah,
And so did the law firm that guy represented, and that's how this stuff scales.
Yeah, so law firms are going to be able to locally go out and find, hey, I'm going to find my local 2 or 3 tuners whenever these law firms aren't busy. And by the way, there's a surplus of lawyers right now. So these law firms are going to be able to just bring you in locally, and they bring you to the EPA. They hook you guys up, and then they get a cut of the fines, and it sucks. And that is what's going on.
Like a class action lawsuit works or something like that. You just get a.
No, it's different
type lawyer, but yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I guess
you generally end up with
Brian, of a mass tort situation, because instead of, you're bringing a case against one company or manufacturer on the basis, it's like the Boy Scout thing right now, or like what happened with the guys that used to make plastic fuel jugs, Blitz. The tort gang, people all ganged up on them because people were lighting themselves on fire by smoking while they were filling up their jugs at a gas station. And so they sued the people that were making the can. Well, they put them out of business. Yay. So that's the one direction of that mass tort situation. This is the opposite, where they have enough people that are incentivized sufficiently to go after a whole bunch of little guys. And it's all created by this, the EPA, quote unquote, is a self-funding mechanism. So they have to live off the fines and the things that they gather. So that's why their process is something that's generated to create the largest number of fines across the largest number of people.
I'll say it again for the 100th time. I recommend going out and reading the EPA website. They have a vehicle-specific Clean Air Act violations list of they say it's their active cases. It turns out it's a small fraction, a very small fraction, like 10% maybe of their cases they have going on. But it gives you a good cross-section of what they're doing, who's suffering. And I'll tell you what, I've loaded these up into a spreadsheet because you can get it in a CSV format. And just, you can tell that there's probably 180 high roller employees of the EPA involved with this. And there's a couple thousand next tier contractors or outside law firms, whatever, bringing the cases into them. Just by, I did a pivot table list of the names, not that I'm stalking anybody, but there's a very large number of people on the order of a couple thousand who this is their day job now, is to go figure out who's doing the tampering and go run them down. I mean, I hate to sound alarmist, but it's a good time to get alarmed.
Well, it's a good time to rethink, what the nature of your business is and how you're going about doing it and those things. And consider what the liability situation is. It's the unfortunate reality of this. And if you know someone who does regulatory defense work, an attorney that does regulatory defense work in your state jurisdiction, can have a quick conversation with them. By having that conversation, your conversation will be protected by attorney-client privilege. And you can ask those questions. That may mean you need to spend a little bit of money, but that may be money well spent in order to avoid something much worse down the road. Because there's no indication from the current administration and what they're doing with DOT and EPA and everything else that this is going to get better suddenly. And Scott, a minute ago, you brought up, SEMA or PRI. Their work was and has been exclusively focused on RPM Act related stuff. Jeff Bonneville on the YouTube thing asked a question about that. That whole thing is about the EPA's contention that anything vehicle that was sold under the Clean Air Act auspices remains that way forever, and can't be converted into a race car, even though some letter of the law seems to indicate that it can. It's not 100% clear, and they've been attempting to pass that act to close that, call it a reverse loophole, if you will. And the specific comment was that PRI sent out a note today to everybody who's on a PRI mailing list that they had filed what's known as an amicus brief in another case brought by Gearbox. And to the effect that, yes, if you convert a car, you take off the tags, you make it a permanent trailered only race car, then the CAA, the Clean Air Act, shouldn't apply to you. And the EPA is still wanting to claim that it does.
Right. They're trying to go after cars that used to be certified emissions tampered VINs and everything. They did. Right. So Corey basically had a Duramax with a factory computer, and that was enough. Everything else, Pro Mod drag truck, everything else, that was enough for them to say, hey, man, you've been tampering with OBD on-road type equipment, which is such bullshit.
Yeah.
So which years does that count towards? Didn't all that stuff start in the 70s, like 75, 76?
Anything that's been under the Clean Air Act, which I forget the exact year.
It's like 78 or 79.
It's one point I want to make because it keeps coming up. Everyone's like, oh, I guess, pick on Nathan Hardy here. He's like, oh, how do we outsmart this? Well, the reason we're in the point we're in right now is because we've been assholes for years about this. We've used off-road only. Oh, it's a race car. And let's face it, every single person listening here, we've abused that for way too long. And they didn't enforce it. Well, they wanted to. The problem was we let off-road use only fly for so long and wouldn't let them enforce it. So now what we're seeing is we're reaping kind of the or kind of what we built here to a certain extent. Yeah, not saying it's right, and you're reaping what not saying we don't need to fight it. Yeah, so we've definitely kind of gotten ourselves into a point where they've tried, and we kind of we've thrown our middle finger at this law for so long, and is it aggressive, and is it at the point where there is a crisis and there needs to be some pushback? Absolutely. But pushing back right now, saying, oh, well, how do we fight this? How do we get around it? And how do we still, if you're still saying, I want to delete streetcars, I want to tune my streetcars, I get it. We all want super fast streetcars, but we're coming up with the point where we need to figure out how to do that legally. And there are, I'm ordering right now a 750 horsepower Mustang Roush supercharger kit that carries EO compliance. They want you to do that. They do want EO compliance. So as a tuner, if you're going to keep messing with factory stuff that isn't a race car, that's where I would look. I would look at how to become very knowledgeable and an expert at EO compliance, because there's a lot of people that aren't going to do it.
Counterpoint to that. So I talked to a guy who does, and I've told people on here before, I'm not the most experienced at it, but I've worked through 2 projects where we took an engine family through emission certification. And I've worked with a guy. Usually what you do, even if you're a calibrator, I was the house calibrator, but we hired a contractor, a consultant really, to come in who's very familiar with the process, the paperwork you have to file, and he can help you. They helped us with the Woodward stuff we were doing, which is the same as Pro EFI. Anyway, I talked to him on the phone just the other day, and he was adamant that an EO would not carry you very far in any kind of investigation. And he thought that, or he said that he knew that was an issue because there were exemption orders had been issued for stationary engines and petroleum applications out in California, like the stuff that fell under CARB, and that he swore that stuff didn't stand up.
Per the most recent EPA documentation, they specifically mentioned, and we had that conversation.
I saw that.
They specifically said if you carry an EO compliance, and so part of where we really need to focus is clarifying some of this.
I'll be talking to Steve more about that.
Definitions.
Yeah, I want to talk to him more about that because it was interesting. I saw that documentation. The EPA actually published something. But did you read what it said? Actually, it says generally we typically try to steer clear of EO. Anyone who's got an EO, which then tells me,
I need to go back and read it. Yeah, I think there's probably some monkey business going on with getting EOs and people. Well, like even as it is right now. So there's some supercharger companies that we've dealt with that we buy a tuner kit from because their tune works. There's no reason I need to charge someone extra to do a custom tune when they don't need it. So we do a lot of that because it frees up my time for our race car projects, which is 99% of what we tune. So, but we've got those devices, but then they're, oh, it's an EO compliant tune, but then they ship it with actually what's an open programmable device, which, and then we'll do iterations. And I know those iterations aren't EO compliant. So I think there's like, well, we got an EO compliance. Well, yeah, we started that way, but you very quickly went away from it. So they want to make sure it's not more, oh, well, off-road use, oh, it's EO compliant. But by the way, here's an under-the-table thing that no longer is, because if you're knowingly shipping something EO compliant that you know can be easily defeated, you didn't do your due diligence to make sure that it remains EO compliant.
Yeah,
that's a great.
But there's some other issues. There's some other issues. My buddy Steve was coming at it from the MOR perspective once again, which is where that's just the only thing I know as well. And dude, if you Ford, you go out and get an exemption order for a Ford for your project, like Bill I think is working on, or something similar, for a swap, and see, I've got an exemption order for this that works or whatever. That doesn't exempt the manufacturer on record from the responsibility of their fleet still meeting emissions. Ford can still get fined and punished, and they do during when OEMs fail fleet tests, which are done frequently, especially out in California. CARB will run these on the roadside. They'll pull over your 3-year-old Ford Mustang, bone stocks, lady going to the grocery store on the highway on the 405, and check for emissions right on the roadside. They'll do a little test to do fleet testing. And man, they don't come after the end user in those tests. They come after the manufacturer.
Yeah, so you want to be careful talking about manufacturer of record and how that would affect the people that we're talking about here. So let's step back a second and define a couple of terms.
Sure.
So an EO, an exemption order, is a creature of CARB, the California Air Resources Board. That is currently the only entity, other than some stuff that goes on in Michigan, that generates exemption orders to the Clean Air Act as their special carve out that they got from the Clean Air Act going back to the beginning of it. And that was something the Trump administration was trying to take away. Some of you may recall that didn't, even though there was an executive order to that effect, most people don't think that was sufficient to make the change. But the short answer is, so California Air Resources Board has a process by which you can be granted an exemption order for a part that modifies the original emissions on the car. Now, Roush is a great example of this because they build modified Mustangs that are sold through Ford dealerships as brand new, and then they also sell a set of parts where they've gone through the exemption order testing and certification process, which is not a simple thing. No. In terms of you have to do all the work and you have to then demonstrate that it does not alter the emissions profile of the vehicle in the traditional emissions testing, which is this idle speed and then slow speed, and there's a bunch of other stuff. And automobiles that are manufactured today, up until very recently, were all self-certified because the EPA didn't want to spend the money to actually bring cars in and certify it themselves. So they self-certified, which is how we got Dieselgate with Volkswagen and some other things, because they had a special thing where if it tested, they could put this program in, and that blew up in everybody's face on the manufacturing side. So yes, you can buy a product with an exemption order, but if you start stacking things with an exemption order, unless you can show that that cold air intake, along with that supercharger, along with that set of headers, has a blanket exemption order all put together, you could still be in violation for installing that on someone's car.
Yep. So even Ford Performance all has to have that. I remember I was looking up EO numbers, because we had a car come in that wanted, he's like, yeah, I want to see what I can do. And he was trying to do, ironically, an EO compliant tune from SCT, and it wouldn't work. And I noticed there's an EO compliance or an EO sticker on the car. It's like, oh, this has a Ford Performance Pack. So if you start reading it, the EO will be specifically for a combination of parts. And as soon as you change that, then, and I think that's where some of the gray wording that the EPA has used was to allow them to still go after that. So guys like, oh, I had an EO compliance number. It's not my fault the customer changed the intake, even though it's an intake I sell. I just don't sell it with that kit. It's not what I told them to use. It's not my fault they bought it. So I think that's their, they're trying, we took very flagrant advantage of loopholes and open parts of the way the law was written and enforced for so long. that they're just closing every single one.
Hang on, one quick thing. Didn't one of the famous calibrators out there, which honestly we should have that guy on here, didn't Banish, he worked at Roush when they were doing some of these, didn't he say that they were doing this under the auspices of Ford? I mean, basically it was in Ford's filed paperwork with the EPA that, hey, Roush tested this with we sign off on it and everything is cool. I mean, didn't that come out as part of the SEMA garage stuff that, well, actually the Roush stuff was under Ford's wing, kind of? I thought that was a little bit, I know there's some gray area with some guys will argue the EO stuff. Generally, some of the OEM factory calibrator guys they're not big fans of the EO plan, but there are some people.
Well, it's for better or worse, it's what we ended up with. I'm not advocating that it's a great plan or it's a great anything else. It is the world that we live in.
It's no
Our
other
project was taking a 2018 Mustang GT engine and transmission and putting it into a 1999 Mustang Cobra, whatever you want to call that year of car. But the bottom line is we did everything by the book, working with a carb referee. And I mean everything. We took it to a dealership. They ran it on their dyno. We got the report. We had an issue that we learned about later, which was trying to get the 2018 CAN stuff to talk to the dash in the 1999. And there's something about the CAN frequencies are different. And
different speeds. Yep.
Yeah. And so without spending an enormous amount of money on an interface box, which nobody had actually made one of those, there was no way to get the two things to talk to one another. And therefore, based on that, we were not going to get our carb approval, which to me is nuts because, I mean, we had our cats, we had everything. I mean, everything.
The problem is the way some of the law is written. The CAN system is part of the control pack, which is therefore part of the calibration. And yeah, it's because that CAN is tied into the CAN that controls everything else.
Yeah, and so body module stuff, again, nothing to do with emissions, but we ran up against that, and that wasn't something we had the smarts or the ability to fix, and nobody at the moment had a part for it. So we ended up with that car going to the state of Washington, where that set of things, here we go with different states, can be legally certified. So,
well, part of the problem is literally almost anything you do to a car is illegal. Like you change the tire size, technically that's illegal. If you read the rules, most people don't understand that.
Yep, gray area.
It changes everything.
Exactly.
It's really not a gray area. It's clearly defined.
Actually, you're right. It's not a gray area.
It's not gray.
Totally
it's
per the way it's written, unless you prove that it meets factory emissions.
Listen, there's a guy that installed an AEM test pipe in a 1992 Toyota Tacoma pickup truck or whatever it was. But because he was on their list, he decided not to show up and kind of ran from the EPA guys or whatever. And he's got like $7 million in federal criminal fine. I think it's criminal, but it's federal fines. It's a big deal. But I mean, there's little, I guess there is no gray area. You can
that's been my point the whole time. Is that's the stuff that look, can we bring some common sense into this? These are written so open, it's insane. Stop trying to do how do we do the stuff that we know is illegal. Stop taking catalysts off of streetcars, stuff like that. Stop trying to figure out how to get around that and defeat your O2 and actually defeat your emissions devices. And let's actually make the law make sense so we can at least we can put wheels and tires on cars. We're not all driving stock cars around with stock everything.
Well, that's how I feel. So how do we band together and say, hey, we still want to do this stuff. We don't want to be the diesel guy going down the street, sooting up the whole block, but we still want to have fun.
Oh, I sure wish all we had to do was meet emissions requirements.
You know what I mean?
I
mean, most guys that tune, the emissions end up better than what they were previously.
I was going to say how much, say a tuner actually does put in the effort, buy a 5-gas analyzer, go through the paces of actually attempting to meet real emissions, not necessarily by the laws, but actually meet legitimate, emission standards, if not better than what that particular vehicle came out with, and had documentation to prove that.
Yeah, you do, but you get shit on. It doesn't matter.
So if you read that document, there was a real interesting part that even said, even if you don't have an EO compliance, proof that this combination would be eligible for EO compliance, basically you did exactly what James said. As a tuner, I had data that said, hey, this tune on this car met emission standards for this year vehicle. Here's my gas output. There was an allocation for that says, hey, if you do this, that's, you can't just wing it. So they kind of, again, they left it a little like, hey, we're not saying if you do this, you're fine. What we're saying is, hey, yeah, you guys should do this. They want you to follow up. The problem right now is the process to do EO compliance is crazy expensive. You're not going to do it on every
really
car.
lengthy.
So,
aren't they backed up like 6 months to a year anyway? So even if you try to do it, you're still a year out. Right?
They were back
Something
before
like that.
COVID. They were backed up, and there was all kind of allegations about whether backed up on purpose because you could go through the lab work at the SEMA garage or the other certified centers, but then it still had to go back through CARB, and it wouldn't happen. Everything just fell into a deep, dark place. Of course, during COVID, that got worse because all those people had to be paid to stay home and do nothing. And now it's
oh Jesus!
Don't get me started on that.
Me either.
But the bottom line is, so we're only beginning to figure out that we're going to work our way out of that particular hole. But in the meantime, the enforcement mechanisms can roll right along because that's just this is the revenue where it's coming after the moonshiners. So
exactly.
And these guys kind of have the final say, right? So it's not like you can just keep appealing this. Once you get hit, you get hit. There's really nothing you can do about it, right?
Well, and again, this is not even in the courts the way most of these work. You're in front of administrative law judges and you're in front of other stuff where there's a whole separate constitutional question about whether those should exist, but we're not going to solve that here. But the point being that it's a very difficult thing to fight. You can spend a great deal of money. And again, unless you were the guy that was doing the work on behalf of the city of Dallas or something, that's going to be a difficult thing to do. So everybody's listening to the sound of our voices needs to think about this a little differently about, what their business is and how they're going to continue to do business because, this thing is rolling at us and at least until 2022. And there could be some kind of change in the House of Representatives and in the Senate. That's the direction these things are going. So, people say, what can we do about it? What can we band together? Well, I hate to say this, but it's, think about who you vote for. And I'm talking about congressional races and other stuff.
Yeah, exactly. This isn't just a presidential thing, man. You have a chance to vote for this stuff frequently.
You know what's ironic about that is there was all those Biden campaign commercials and stuff with him riding in his Corvette, like showing he's like a car guy and a normal guy. This shows the exact opposite,
Well, I'll tell you another thing that we could do is actually call your representatives and ring it off the freaking hook.
Well, so that was something I thought of.
So by the way,
is if we actually started calling our representatives and say, hey, we want you to change this or do something for us.
Well, the thing is, just clarify.
How many millions of us are there out there? There's 20 of them in every county in this country. If one of them called every single week, it'd probably get something done.
Well, the problem is the laws currently are just too lax as far as not specific enough. So it's all based on interpretation.
Yeah, but this is a revenue thing. They're not going to go changing that just because you feel like it.
Yeah, but the bottom line is things can change if, like anything else, if there's sufficient public political pressure, and there's lots of people calling lots of people all the time about their pet issue.
Calling, but if you are tuning, you are out there, let's show that we're not, we're not the diesel guys. We're not that. We're trying to meet emissions, and that we're actually making an effort to educate ourselves to do the right thing in the industry. If we're tuning a streetcar, hey, let's put 5 gas analyzers on it. Most dynos have an input for it. It's not hard to do. The flip side of that is, talk to your guys at SEMA. Let's make the compliance process easier for an average shop and an average tuner and get some education out there. Show you're doing that and call your representative and say, hey, look, this is what we're doing. We're trying to help. We're trying to do this the right way. Help us do it the right way and help the law help us and not just make criminals out of us regardless of what we do.
Right.
And that's how you do that is you talk to your representatives, right? Because they're the ones that make the laws, right? Ideally.
Yep.
Is that right, Bill?
Give them the right ammo to go with it
ultimately,
too.
that's another can of worms we could open about how these things get done and why the administrative state is the one running things at the moment. Nevertheless, one thing that SEMA does for everybody, when I say everybody, because you can get to these resources without being a member, go to the SEMA Government Affairs page. And in that, there's a link to, you can look up every single senator, congressperson, anywhere in the country. And if you want to know who to call, in your state and where you live, you can figure out from that list who that is. And then, that's a way for everybody listening to the sound of our voice, if you're concerned about this, to make an intelligent, well-reasoned, conversation, email, and just say, hey, this affects our livelihoods.
Let them know you're a part of a $60 billion industry.
Yes, and that you're a minority. Sorry.
Make sure you're not white.
Hey, is Grease
Is the
Monkey
lawyer gonna be the
considered
one
a
that gets
gender?
us sued today?
Might as well just say you're transgendered on that one.
Is Grease Monkey a race?
Oh, great. I'm a transgender tuner. Hey, we may actually know some of those. I've always
My
wondered
car
about Chuck at
identifies.
HHP. No, I'm kidding, Chuck. Giving him a hard
My
time.
car identifies as an electric vehicle.
Yes, there it is. Yeah, so the bottom line is those are the things you can actually do. Everything else, reflect on this. Do we have anything nice and fun to talk about now? Because now it's all been depressing.
James bought a C4 Corvette, man. James McEwen wants to know if you bought a jacket, the silver jacket that says Corvette across the back with the flags.
I'm gonna have to get on eBay and look for one now.
You already got New Balance shoes. I know it.
When you can get a plate on the front that says the James.
The James. James. So I'm actually, now I feel like shit because I like C4 vets, man. I spent a lot of time up at Lingenfelter the last couple of years, and they were always restoring somebody's ZR1 or something cool. And god damn it, for some reason those cars grew on me, and especially when the ZR1 came out. But
hey, my buddies at Kennedy Racing have records at Bonneville and El Mirage with a C4. So
correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, that's gonna make a nice DD. Just it's just a C4.
Dun 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 with an OptiSpark. That
Not
shit's
for long,
getting
more than
vintage
likely.
now, man. You need to take an OptiSpark and just hang it on the wall because there won't be any left at some point. And,
Yeah, I mean, so I'm fine with an OptiSpark in a museum. It just does not belong in a car anymore.
Right.
I think you had overly bad luck, man. I put 130,000 miles on a 4th gen F body LT1, a 94 Camaro with a 6-speed, and I had never ever had to replace the Opti on that thing.
And you got a Guinness Book of World Records, I think, for that, didn't you?
I may have, but I don't even remember if we did any mods to the Opti stuff or anything. But it always worked fine for us.
Well, what I noticed was part of the problem is they get old and they dry out, and the plastic breaks on them, and then they get destroyed. At least that's what happened with us down in Florida. The rotor would come apart and take the rest of the unit out.
Right. The sensors were kick ass in those things, by the way. The optical sensors, the high resolution trigger wheels were actually kick ass, and those were Nissan and Mitsubishi designs that GM licensed the patents off of. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, but
it's actually a really cool
open
design.
and it rained, or if the water pump leaked, it was toast. That's all it was. And water pumps were notorious for leaking on those cars. Period. They were the worst design ever. And you had to remove the water pump to get to the OptiSpark.
It's almost like they designed that.
Pump, you have to replace the OptiSpark.
It's almost like they designed that to happen on purpose. You know what I mean?
It literally drips right on the vent hole.
Yeah. You know what? We're gonna make this the failure point on this car. So at 130, it's done.
We'll take them off the road.
LT junk. Just follow Jonathan Atkins. James, are you gonna do something cool like put a standalone on that, or what are you gonna do? You're gonna put do a 24x GM computer on that? Would be kind of badass too. I wouldn't mind seeing that.
I haven't decided yet because it is an older. It's the first year. It's a '92 model, so it's batch fire, and the ECU it's an old chip based ECU. It's actually funny. It's actually what I'm working on right now.
He's got his burners out. That's awesome. So old the EPA doesn't even care.
Right. But yeah, I don't know. It just depends on what's the easiest to integrate in. Either way, it's going to get a crank trigger, and OptiSpark's going bye-bye eventually. So
if you're tuning with a solder station, you're a bad motherfucker, man.
Tuning with a solder station.
That's what I'm doing, man. You should see my. I'll post pictures. Oh, I got shamed. I posted pictures of my breadboard homemade ECU for the turbine dyno Monday. I got shamed by 2 guys that, you're just reinventing the wheel. I'm like, really? Show me a gas turbine controller that's not $100,000. Even if it's like 25 grand.
Years old.
Yeah, exactly. Same. I was just like, what are you talking about?
Unless you're paying $1 million, you're not getting new gas turbine.
Well, they told me I could use an industrial PLC, and I had already looked into using PLCs, and it's the same shit that I'm doing.
We talked about that like 3 months ago.
Yeah, exactly. The reason I'm not using the PLC again is because I don't want to get into a giant programming learning thing. I've got a group of guys like the Speeduino guys have an environment that includes calibration software that's easy to use, logging facilities, both on the board and to my calibration software, which I'm familiar with using, by the way. And they offered me the ability to very quickly build a framework for the firmware. So Josh, the Speeduino guy, has been sending me firmwares now that have the startup routines built in. Right, we push the momentary button. This thing kicks off the starter. Once it hits a certain RPM, it puts fuel and spark into it. It gives it 10 seconds to pick up an RPM to take off. It's watching the EGTs through that process and shutting down if it has to. It's some cool shit, and they were able to whip that out in a matter of a couple of weeks. So I'm pretty stoked.
I'll back you up on the breadboards, because breadboards are great for development. Just saying, I have my own little breadboard going on.
Yep.
I gotta say, I think Evans gets the Great and Powerful Evans Award for the most astounding background and lasers and whatever the hell else is going on.
I gotta keep it interesting. I mean,
there's a little bit of background
envy
going on
in
here.
my career, so I might as well show it off for what I'm hoping I can do again someday.
I sensed a little bit of background envy going on there. Just saying.
Yeah, I'm not worried.
I like you guys both have this good background stuff going on, man. I'll tell you.
Yeah,
I wouldn't mind being at the beach that Bill's at right now. I wouldn't mind being at that beach.
Yeah, some people have snow, and we're suffering with this. It's okay.
So what else, gentlemen? Let's see, what else was there to talk about?
I know we have Perduto on. I'd love to hear.
I'd
more
like to hear his lights out take.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yo, Mikey.
Mike,
is he still here?
No, he's not. He bailed on us. He pussy.
Oh, he gone.
He gone. He went to lights out. Him and Will Tetro, they did pretty good until they broke a torque converter. That part sucks. Well, let's see what else, man. James, sorry, I'm looking at Scott Evans made a funny in our private chat. Let's see what else. Anybody else on here? Old Hypertech chip for that vet in my home toolbox.
I just read that nice.
Right?
I might have a Hypertech box sitting here. I don't know why I still have it. It was like one of those I was cleaning out stuff that it's been moved probably 4 times. I'm like, why the hell is this here?
Classic.
Cool.
Well, who else? Got anybody else got stuff they want to talk about? Because we're through my list, man.
All I want to say is to James McKeon, I don't think we need any more. What does Cletus call that thing? Leroy's or vet carts or I think that's been done. The other day I saw one that somebody showed up with, and it was a formerly a Panther platform Crown Vic. Okay, that's been done. Time for something new.
Yeah, the whole stripped down, and there's the Miata Exo set, and then it turned into the Ghetto set stuff where guys were just cutting all the body, like that whole thing. It was going on for years before Cletus did it, and then he did it. It's been over with. We've begged those guys to stop bringing those cars to the track for time attack and track days.
They're so fun to ride around in, though. Sorry.
Oh, they are. I get it.
I mean, get yourself an Ariel Atom or something, though, too.
Right.
Those
so
are
there's
funner.
the Ghetto way to do it. It's just the problem is you can go to Harbor Freight and buy a MIG welder for a couple $100. Everyone's like, oh, I'll just bend up some tubes. There's a lot of really sketchy ones out there.
Yeah.
They suck to drive. They're fun to drive on the street because they do feel fast. They suck to drive on the track.
Right.
Because they're meant to have a body on it. The Ariel Atom actually has a lot of CFD work done on it to make it somewhat aerodynamic for its body shape. So all of the exo sets on those strip cars suck. The wind's in your face. They have a ton of drag. They're slow. They handle really weird.
Yeah, I can see him handling really weird.
Yeah, so guys, do new stuff, not old stuff that everybody else already did. No one cares.
Bill hates the vet carts.
And at that point, I'd buy Caterham, something along those lines. There's a bunch of really cool Caterham kits out there that you can build and do a bunch of really crazy stuff with. Buy an Atom. I mean, Atoms you can't get into an Atom for less than $70,000 used right now. But there's a bunch of cool stuff out there. Start building new stuff. Stop just doing what the YouTube guys do.
Man, I would take one of those vet carts and literally just build a resto mod. Like put a 60 3 to body style Corvette body on the thing.
Yeah, then you end up with something that drives really nice and looks cool.
Yeah, so there's actually a company that made an old pre-war Alfa Romero chassis or looking car, like an old Alfa Formula Le Mans style car that goes on a Miata. There's actually a chance we might be building some of those here in the US for them.
So
I've got to double check. I forgot about that. So yeah, I mean,
so maybe people remember the Ferrari body kits you could put on Fieros. I mean, there's that have been done, and I don't know.
Come on, dude. You know I could show up with one of those, and that'd be baller. Or one of those. Shit! What was that movie? That TV show that had the guy with the coyote? They called it the Coyote kit car or whatever.
How's the legality on the kit cars work? You know what I mean? Since we brought this up with the emissions.
It depends on the area. So it's state by state. A lot of guys, someone mentioned the Minnesota law. I don't know if guys are aware of that. Minnesota, they don't do any inspections. So
we did a Copo car. General Motors was pissed, but they had a customer that took a Copo car and I tuned it and put it on the street. GM was pissed. Lawyers were calling, but the guy ended up keeping the car. They ended up backing down. Yep.
So what a lot of guys do is they basically start a shell company. You pay a company to make a LLC, a blind LLC in Minnesota. You sell the car to that blind LLC, they register it, and you drive around with Minnesota plates. A lot of problems with that legally. It could be tax evasion that has been gone after because some guys do it for tax reasons. But at the end of the day, if you're driving your car every day on Minnesota plates in Massachusetts, and I'm a cop and I see this car with Minnesota plates every single day, there are certain laws about after you move registering your car. And you can register a car out of state, but there has to be certain requirements. It has to be in that state a certain period of time, et cetera, et cetera. So it's the same. It's another middle finger at the law. Can you do it? Yeah. Are guys getting away with it? Yeah. At some point, are they going to crack down on it? Are you going to get screwed when they do? Absolutely. Some states make it a little bit easier. So kit cars, a lot of states actually have laws on how to register a kit car. So factory fives, they actually have some resources for guys to do that. Typically what you have to do, a lot of states are requiring you to pass emissions of the year of the donor vehicle you used. So if you build a factory 5 GTM and you used a 2004 Corvette platform, some states are going to require you to pass the emissions from that. So you have to bring all that emission stuff over, sort of what Bill was talking about. What they had to do, they had to pass a plug-in emissions. All of the communication has to be there. You have to have evap control. You have to have all of that. All of those systems have to work. You can't defeat them. You can't turn them off just because you get in a tune. Even if it passes plug-in because you turned it off, that's illegal. Don't do that because that's going to make them stop you do that. It's possible to do all that. Some states are a little bit more open about it. New Hampshire isn't too bad to register it. We just registered a Defender, a bowler actually there. Cool. No, I'm sorry. We registered it as a bowler. That car actually has all of the emission components from the donor vehicle. It's the one I 100% went through all of the inspection, and we got a bill of manufacture or a bill of not bill. It's a I forget what the document's called now.
I know what you're talking about.
It's basically a document.
But it's basically the new title, right? The fresh title.
A document of origin, kind of.
Yes.
That said, hey, this car was built by TMI Autosport in the U.S., licensed under Bowler, et cetera, et cetera. Here's the parts in it. Here's the engine. Here's where it came from. Here you go. And it passes plug-in emissions. So that's how most of the kit cars, if you want to register them the right way, that's what you have to do. The Atom stuff is a little weird. They do have plug-in emissions and stuff like that. That's a conversation we're actually having of how to do it. It's not terrible to do in New Hampshire. An Atom kind of follows a kit car because they're turnkey here, but it's a Honda engine. It runs an HPD ECU and all of that stuff. So there's some, and then that's one of the conversations I'm having is making sure that we stay on the right side there. But it's check your state. There's a lot of laws there. There's a lot of federal laws, kind of like Bill mentioned sometimes, and we're not seeing this just in cars. We actually had this conversation about distilling alcohol and certain drugs, technically that are federally illegal that states say aren't. Technically, the federal government, federal agent could still come and try to arrest you or fine you for some of this stuff. That's where some of the gray areas need to be cleaned up. But for a kit car, just know your state's laws about what you have to do and make the effort to keep the emission systems from the donor vehicle you're using.
Yeah, one of the best resources around for that generally is Factory 5. Not that you're going to build a Factory 5.
They got some good info. That's a good company.
Stuff on their website.
So the owner of Factory 5 is a really, really laid back, really nice guy. They're somewhat local to me. I've been there a bunch. When I was in college, they actually helped us out.
That's cool.
with
I
a lot
didn't
of
know you
stuff.
know those guys because they do good shit. They take care.
So
of
one of the guys we crew for the first time I was there for a tour. This guy literally, there's a helicopter. I was like, oh, I didn't know Factory 5 had a helicopter. Now it turns out a guy that came for the tour landed his helicopter. Now it turns out I help work on that dude's cars. He has a GT2 RS Club Sport. It's a $500,000 race only Porsche.
Yep, right.
We the
Club
guys at Ace crew for him. They help him with stuff and we work on his cars. So that I remember this was recently. I was like, wait, did Carl land his helicopter at Factory 5 for a tour? And Bear, the guy owns it. So I was like, yeah. I was like, that's why I remember him. But yeah, they're super laid back guys. They have a lot of resources. They want to help guys build kit cars. They want it to be theirs, obviously, but they have an interest in keeping kit cars legal. That's their business. You know, they want to sell these cars to people that are going to drive them on the street. So
yeah.
So basically, the end of it. Stop being dicks. Stop throwing your middle finger at the law. Like, let's do this the right way and show that we're doing it the right way.
And we can all get back to those sweet 212 wheel horsepower cars that they want us to drive.
We've got 700-800 horsepower cars with ES certificates.
This is
we've got
time
800
of our
horsepower
life,
cars being produced
this is the
from
best
the
it's gonna
factory.
ever get right here. Yep, with a warranty, no less.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
yeah, we're within a year or two, I think, of the absolute peak of this. Sadly, I would like to that not be true, but unfortunately, I think we might be close.
We saw the zenith in our lifetime.
Yeah. I'm always amused by the people. Oh, the golden age of muscle cars, and I was alive during the golden age of muscle cars, and it was like, yeah, I got an SS 454 Chevelle, runs 14s, and I'm a badass. It's like, yeah.
Right.
It's just going to move into electric car tuning,
which I'm ready for.
That's all there is. Yeah, I'm cool with it. It's going to be a learning curve for everybody. You know, we're all going to have to learn how to control the voltage and control the motors
I wish I had thought to share this document earlier. I'm gonna go find it and I'll post it on the RealTuners page. Porsche is working on a synthetic fuel.
Saw it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this.
I haven't read details. I'm not as up
Start
about
that whole
it.
sentence again, Brian. Say the whole thing again.
Porsche is building basically a synthetic fuel that will be. They claim no conversion necessary for internal combustion engines. Now, is it going to be like, well, technically E85, you put it in, but you have to do, there's going to be something involved, but it's specifically a fuel designed to produce as few toxins and other pollutants as possible. They were saying something where if, you say a normal gasoline burning combustion engine produces 40 different chemicals that are pretty much all bad for the environment. This one produces 3. The marketing they're saying is that from well to tailpipe, it's less pollutive than an electric vehicle. Now, there's political arguments of mining the batteries and this and that. So I don't know what the benchmark for that is, and what's the level of production. Are they talking once we've got a battery built and building the car? Because there's all kinds of arguments about that, but it looks like it is a step that might keep some sort of fuel vehicles in.
Honestly, hydrogen is kind of, the natural fuel that is the cleanest. I don't know why we don't explore that more personally, but
yeah, to be honest, I used to follow the fuel cell stuff a lot. I know for the longest time the hurdle was they're not financially feasible to build with the materials required. I don't know if that's just not moved the way they thought it would. There's a lot of options, but being willing
people who aren't educated about hydrogen are fearful of it because Hindenburg.
Yeah, right. But the actual hydrogen cells,
that's their brain conception. Right. Are great. Right. The hydrogen cells are phenomenal and actually really, really hard to make it explode or catch on fire or cause a major malfunction like that. They're designed very, very well. But most people don't know that.
Ironically, it's even stuff like last year at Long Beach, not last year, 2 years ago at Long Beach, when there was an electric drift car competing in Formula Drift. Long Beach actually did not let it compete. Not because it was electric, but because it's an electric car competing alongside gasoline cars, they're just like, we just don't know how to deal with the fire. There's actually a statute that doesn't allow that because they were afraid that the combination, and that, it's like anything else. There's obviously
Damn
we want to
lawyers.
err on the side of caution, but at the end of the day, everyone's afraid of getting sued, and that's really what it comes down to. No one wants to be the one holding the buck when the lawsuit falls.
The phrase "with an abundance of caution" is the reason that schools aren't open in a lot of this country, because once you shut something like that, then you get the morons teachers union demanding perfection before they reopen. Another soapbox I'm not going to get on. People talking about what could people do that's useful. Kevin Shaw, who I assume is a Kiwi,
Yes.
posted about the Low Volume Vehicle Technical Association. That sounds like a highly useful model and is something that, frankly, I'm willing to take up, and I'm going to have a conversation with my buddies that Scott likes so much at SEMA to see if maybe we could do something in that direction. Might not solve the world.
Maybe we can
So
have
there-
a fraternity
there has been-
party while we solve the world's problems.
There actually has been
Just kidding,
some
sorry.
laws about this. They're more around, the fact that for those that I saw that you posted something, Scott, I've been in quarantine up until today for almost 2 weeks. So I don't have, there's a bunch of stuff from our shop that I don't have. One thing we've talked about, and I probably have it in my email, there actually is some laws regarding replica cars. So laws allowing, there's certain
Federal
things we
stuff
can
or
and
state
can't do.
stuff?
Federal.
Yeah, wow.
That actually allow us to make, because there's some stuff we're shifting more and more towards that kinds of stuff anyway. So I talked about the Bowler, which is a basically a replica of the Defender but modernized. In fact, the one we worked on actually competed in the Dakar Rally. It was the owner of Bowler's car, so not just this model, this exact vehicle has competed in Dakar. So those there's some remakes of some old Morgans, some vehicles like that. Some of the Caterhams fall under that, where they're a replica vehicle. They're under a certain volume. There's certain exemptions that are on paper that we get. Some of which may be some emissions. They're gonna have to pass certain levels of emissions, but they may not be as strict because that original vehicle didn't have this ECU or this and that. So there is some groundwork for that, and that's exactly what we should be looking at is, how do we, do this legal way, but let's make it documented so we know what to do and there's no gray areas that we're like, oh, well, this is okay, and then in 10 years we're back here. But yeah, I'll look up what that is.
On Lotus 7 equal Caterham or however it's properly pronounced. Brian, I think that's a very good point. And we'd be doing, guys in the US a big service if we could at least, get that. Yes, we can point to some places where there's resources, but that seems like a logical use for SEMA because it would support what the manufacturers do. Just had somebody send me a private message saying they couldn't post in the chat for some reason. It jumped in over the top of what else I was looking at. I love Facebook. In any event, I just think this suggestion that came up from Kevin Shaw is a good one and worth pursuing a little bit. So at least people can focus their energy and direction on that if it's not going to allow them to, do what they want to do with their 2014 Camaro or what have you. So
absolutely, and that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier. Exactly, something that's what we need. Let's get together. Let's do this the right way, and don't just use that as another way to thumb your finger at the law for another 10, 20, 30 years.
Yeah, because ultimately it's not really going to help. This post asks a good question for you guys. It's from Frankie Rodriguez. It says, what are good resources to learn to tune other fuels on gas scale like C16 or E85? I'm on factory ECU, PO1 ECU. I don't know what that means, but can't seem to find reading material on this. What?
It's an LSECU.
Okay. So answers on that gas scale question?
A good resource for it? That's a good question.
Repeat that question. What's the question?
A good resource for learning to tune other alternative fuels, different race fuels, E85, stuff like that? Timing
on gas scale. So
So the way to do this is to contact somebody who you find is a reputable tuner that knows about this thing and pay them for their information and say, hey, would you teach me? Pay for them to teach you about those things. Super simple, super easy. It gets you the resources. It keeps us tuners happy because we can make a few dollars at the same time while helping share the wealth of information that we know to the rest of you. Because in reality, it's not nice to keep everything from everybody, right? You shouldn't be, if you have some information, you can help somebody else out and make it better, then we can get rid of all the misinformation eventually. I mean, there's always going to be misinformation, but the more good information we can spread, the better. So ask a reputable tuner and let the reputable tuners teach you about those things, right? We talk about those things all the time here on the show. So podcasts like us are a great place to find that information sometimes, right? C16, for example, is a great one because we talk about it all the time. Regular gasoline versus C16. I'm not going to run regular gasoline like 12.5 at 25 pounds of boost, but I'm going to run C16 there because it doesn't have a problem with it. It really likes it. It's going to be great. You know, I'm going to do a leaner number on C16 than I'm going to do on pump 93 or say E85, right? E85 on the gas scale. Well, E85 in general, you just throw fuel at it until it stops making power, and every engine is a little bit different. So there isn't a number, but I can tell you that it likes it really, really fat compared to the rest of the fuels. You know, methanol is the same kind of way. You keep throwing fuel at it until it doesn't make any more power. And when it stops making power, well, there's your limit. There's where you stop.
Two things here. One, before I forget, I'm going to piss Justin Carpenter off here. Understand EQ ratio in Lambda. I don't give a shit what you put on your gauge as long as you know what it means. I don't care if you, I honestly keep most things in gas scale because it's easy for my stupid brain not to do extra math. I know Lambda, I calculate back and forth. I set up a calibration in Lambda, but when I'm displaying it, as long as I know that the ECU is doing Lambda, and that's what to understand. Understand your ECU. I don't care what you use. Understand Lambda, understand to be able to use it, and understand what your fuel means. But yeah, there's this is kind of one of those, there's a lot of resources out there.
My ECU in my car just shows as Lambda inside the ECU. When I'm looking at data logs, when I'm looking at real-time information, it shows as Lambda. When I'm driving down the road and I want to glance over and see what the O2s are doing, I'm looking at it in AFR and gas scale because that's what my brain knows the most from years and years and years.
Man, so that is what one of my big gripes on Holly is. I wish they would give you the option to view shit in Lambda.
Yep.
Because I'm the opposite.
I understand it's
right. And then whatever you look at and whatever you use is your reference number. I remember someone freaked out once because I was talking about my GTO and E85. I was like, oh yeah, I run this. I'm like, I was like, oh no, that's gas scale. I don't give a crap. But yeah.
You want a simple way to do that? Make a math channel for logging or use an advanced table to populate just with value numbers that you can read. It doesn't necessarily have to affect anything. You can make a table that literally just populates with a non-decimal PWM millisecond value or a decimal millisecond value that says, oh yeah, it's 14.7. Well, it reads as milliseconds on the table, but you're saying it's 14.7 AFR in your head. You can do ways to trick it to see what you need to see.
Yeah, a lot of
the same thing convert back to Lambda.
It's not even that. It's not even that. It's just honestly like even the commanded table. I mean, it still doesn't fix that. You still have to back calculate it.
The ECU. In the end, the ECU, like you need, like in Haltech, you put it in units, and you can put units in Lambda or AFR, but it doesn't matter. You tell it the stoich of the fuel, and then you tell it what units you're using. And if I tell it my fuel is E85, and I go in the commanded table, and I tell it, hey, let's use AFR gas scale, and I put 14.7, it's going to target Lambda of 1, regardless of what fuel's in it. But that's why, which Justin did say, make the stoich right. Your stoich has to be right unless you're scaling a GM ECU.
Right.
And then just understand what you're doing. But make sure your math is right, and then look at whatever the fuck you want. But it's back to the original question. It's just use your resources, pay a tuner. There's a ton of stuff out there online. Learn how to read stuff and kind of learn between the BS and the real stuff, and learn how use your common sense when you're reading stuff. There's a lot of information out there, and then talk to someone if you can't make sense and you're saying conflicting things and you can't figure out what you think is right. And then just if anything else, just be smart about it. Don't load up a tune on a fuel you don't know and say, oh well, someone said that you run this one leaner, so let's run it super lean and throw all the timing at it and do a pass.
Well, more timing, also more faster. Come on. Am I muted?
Lean is mean, right? I'm a two-stroke guy, so lean is mean. I burn the rings off of it and I replace them after a race. Whatever. It takes me 30 minutes.
Yeah, my buddy Rich is jonesing here because he's having trouble getting a hold of the connector like you're holding in your hand for the bulkhead connector. I told him he needs to get the metal ones like that.
Yeah, so these are, yeah, if you're gonna be heat, these are nice.
Yeah,
I've got a ton of these sitting.
Oh yeah,
right
CPC
HD 30s. It looks like he did.
Yeah, so this is a.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can. Let me see if I can make this bigger. I don't know if that's let me pin that. And my camera is not real clear, but yeah. So these are this is a HD 34-24. So basically, you'll have HD 34 is the series, so it's a Deutsch HD 34. If you're okay with the plastic, HDP 34. And then
do not get the plastic.
Yeah, it depends. I use them inside of cars a lot where they're not exposed to heat on a non.
They already take it on and off like 2 or 3 times and they're toast.
Yeah,
All
under
it
a
takes is
dash,
one
something
time
like
of
that.
misalignment with the threads and you're toast. So
Yep.
yeah, try to stay away from the plastic
So-
ones.
HD 34-24 is the back shell size, and then there'll be another dash, and that's the pin count. But if you just Google Deutsch HD 34, there's a bunch of diagrams that come up that show you the pin layout. So there's a bunch of different configurations, and it'll tell you how many pins it has, what sizes it has, and these use regular Deutsch pins, the same pins that I probably have
your other connectors.
DT and DTM.
Yeah, a bunch of these guys, DTM, DTP. So DTM, DTP, and DT and DTP. So size 20, size 16, and size 14, I think, is a DTP pins. But same pins you use for that. You can get these at Mauser, DigiKey. Bollinger sells the plastic ones as kits if you don't want to go finding all the parts. Wirecare sells a bunch of these as well. They just don't have all the pin configurations. But yeah, I probably have like 5 or 6 of these sitting here.
When you go look for those on like Mouser and DigiKey, you're going to find like 10 different varieties of them because they are keyed. There are little pin slots in them that need to match up. So you just need to pay attention to that and make sure you look at, oh, I found this one. Find the mating part for it. Download the catalog and look up the mating part number for that.
It honestly might be worth doing
2 on top, 1 on the bottom.
Yep. It might be worth doing an episode or a webinar of just maybe make a list of questions ahead of time and we can go through, hey, here's how we find a lot of these parts we use. Because I remember I was looking at parts on DigiKey and one of the guys came in the shop. I was like, God bless you for being able to use that site. And I was like, what do you mean? And I stopped. I was like, oh yeah, it's terrible if you've never done this before. Commercial supply sites are bad, but it's real easy. Like finding Radlock stuff. I have a ton of Radlocks in stock here, which I don't remember if I had one of those last time I was on here. They're a quick disconnect. I'm gonna grab one. They're a quick disconnect battery connector. I'm assuming I remember where I put all of them.
Yeah, I hate those things.
Radlocks?
Yeah.
Really? They work really well. I've used them on a lot of applications. So real nice for bulkhead pass through or something like that. I do wish they made a stronger back shell on them. But these are all the same thing. Like you can buy these. I mean, I sell them too. And it's nice. I've got the kit pre-made, all that stuff, for like $50 for a setup, $55. You can find them a lot cheaper. You're going to do a lot of digging. And if you're like when I was trying to order these the first time, you're going to order the wrong thing like 3 or 4 times. So if you only need one set, yeah, because the part numbers aren't always great. But yeah, there's there's a lot of stuff where I think one of the biggest questions I get asked is, hey, where do you get this? How do you find it? And then like I was like, oh, I'll just go to DigiKey. And then everyone's like, how? I was like, all right, well, you gotta go through the list. You gotta basically decoding the part numbers is a big thing for sensors, stuff like that. And if you can find a data sheet, and that's what eventually got me the right connectors here, is I finally found the decoder for the part number and to figure out what they all mean. And then you can figure out what they are. But also DigiKey makes a real nice DigiKey and like Mauser also always have a mating receptacle part you can click on. So it's like, oh, I want this one. And this is the one, because that's what sucks. That's what always happens if you screw up. You fat finger a key and you order the same pin layout, but it's keyed different. And now you got 2 connectors that don't go together. But I mean, hell, I remember back in the day when the MasterCard was a book. You didn't have a site. You had to open this massive ass book.
Yep. All the fun. So the Alphabet Agency came for Scott, so we apologize for his absence. And he thought we were kidding earlier. Anyway, let's see.
Okay,
what
so
other
what
questions
we get? Anybody?
I think I hear the Italians in the background beating him and making threats about his kneecaps.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's interesting. Our friend Jerry, who teaches students, and thank God somebody's still doing vocational education out in the world. I'm talking about plastic manufacturing and Mauser. Thank you for posting that. Thank God people are still doing that work. Jesus. You know, the Obama administration and now the new administration are continuing the attack on vocational education schools, which I don't understand other than the fact that they're not usually unionized. So there's probably a reason. In any event, God bless you guys doing vocational ed. So other questions that we've got. I'm looking.
Going once.
Oh, no. I hear him.
Scott's back. Sorry.
He's been released.
I have been released. When Rick Vesco calls, you take the call. Oh, but I've still got my camera fucked up. Hold on. Fixing.
Oh, it's okay. We just told everybody the EPA would come for you.
That's all right. Let them come. They don't have a list of my name tied to no VINs. Come get me, copper. I haven't actually. Have I broken the rules? I don't think so. I've never touched a factory ECU. I've never tampered with anything in it. Okay. What else?
Just stop talking. You know, the one reason I know that somebody we were talking about who was on a video earlier talking about their situation has not talked to his attorney is because he was talking on a video
about his situation. I know, right? So Mr.
Yeah, that was my first conversation. He clearly hasn't had an attorney talk to him.
Right.
Yeah, and that I know that was one of the things I mentioned is like he's talking about we said it that in a lot of cases a lot of tuned vehicles might be cleaner, but you can't throw that well, of course they are. Unless you test, you don't know. So, you know, how do we test? How do you do this legally?
I'm not going to lie. I did like him mentioning maybe buying a carbon credit or some portion of a carbon credit. You know what I mean? You know, those seem to make this world go round. So maybe that might be something possible as a reasonable alternative to all this.
Yeah,
I mean,
even a lot of
you know
folks,
what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to let CAFE standards and carbon credits fly in other industries, then let's at least be fair about it, right?
Well, why can't it work here? Okay, so you've got to buy 1/10 of a carbon credit from somebody to do what you want. That might be worth it, you know?
It can, but it doesn't satisfy the Green New Deal absolutists out there. So, you know, for those of you who are listening to us from the great state of New York and more particularly in one of the boroughs of Manhattan, vote out that AOC. If you want to start solving problems for the rest of us, there's an answer.
Oh, man.
Vote out the commies. Right.
What an obnoxious
yeah,
lady is.
And I think you're never going to be able to buy carbon credits as an individual user because then...
Of course not.
Oh, yeah,
But again...
But as an industry, you know, if you had a part... But, I mean, that's going to say, if you start doing it that way, if you're a gun person at all... right now, my buddy had to get a tax stamp for a part for one of his scary black colored rifles. It took him 9 months to get the tax stamp. So that's, you want to modify your car? Cool, do this. And that's the way you have to go. You're going to wait 9 to 10 months to get approval. So,
yikes.
That might be a business. You know, a business buys a bunch of carbon credits and then you break them up and sell them in pieces. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's way out there. I'm just saying, you never know.
The thing I've talked to most guys about, any tuner that's asked me, I was talking to a tuner, a guy I know that's literally is like, I don't know how much tuning I'm going to do between all this. And in his case, he's got some parts production companies that make him 10 times more for way less stress. And it's like, dude, go do that. That's way less stressful. But, you know, get ahead of this. Learn KEO compliance, become kind of what Bill's done. If they're going to write these laws, you know, hey, we might as well make some money off teaching other people how to be legal, learn how to do EO compliance, learn how to do tuning around it, and become an EO compliance consultant or tuner.
You're gonna get there's about 0.00004% of people interested in modding cars that want to go that route.
Yeah, I get it, but that's hey.
Yeah, but if they crack down and
Let's...
they get rid of the manufacturers, you don't have a choice.
Yeah, you don't have parts to buy, buddy.
Yeah, what happens when you can't go buy a set of headers off eBay or Summit anymore? And you go, I mean,
yeah, that was my point. Is that there's going to be a huge void here if you want to learn electric cars, learn how to tune everything else. But that's another void. If you can take the time and educate yourself that and get over the I want to beat my chest and be pissed off about it. All right, well, how do we? One, let's help write the laws so we do have a way to do that. Maybe make that easier. But in the meantime, educate yourself on what you need to do. And at least worst case is if it does wind up being super strict. Hey, I know how to do it the right way. How do we work with companies to make sure we're all doing it the right way? Because there's still companies that are going to want to make parts, and they may not have a tuner. They may not have someone that knows how to do that. So, be the person that they pay you to come in and do that for them.
Yeah, I can tell you because building your own headers sucks.
It sucks. I've done it once. That's it. That's the only time I wanted
good at it.
Oh God, I don't care. Even if you're good at it.
Yeah, it still sucks. He says
it's a ton of work.
I think Dalquist has the right idea on that. You buy something that's close and you make small modifications to it to get the little bit that you need changed. Because for the most part, all the work is done. It's a few more dollars to buy one pre-made, but it saves you a ton of headaches if you can get something that already fits the vehicle and maybe just needs slight modification.
A few dollars to save you hundreds of hours.
A dent.
Yes, a little bit of money to save time is worth it. Yeah,
that's why I always love the guys like, oh, I can build this part for $50. It's like, oh, it's $150 to buy it.
It takes you 3 hours. Yeah,
it's here. I put it on the car, or I spend a day. No, there's absolutely I'm buying it.
Right. Cool. All right, so let's let people go then. If it's time, gentlemen. I don't want to keep everybody just waiting around. It looks like our questions have wrapped up right about on time. Thanks again to Mr. Greg Schmidt for joining us tonight. Anybody else got anything else to say? I better check with producer guy to make sure we're. Looks like he's not even paying attention. Oh, there he is. Okay, music. I'm having to work this by Facebook Messenger. It's interesting because our producer is remote. Works out pretty good though. So anyway, he should be kicking up the music here any second. Trying to think of what else is going on. I don't know, man. We may not be able to make next Wednesday. If Jason and me can run it remotely, we might do that. But we're going to be up in Nebraska, somewhere in the middle of the cornfield, testing gas turbine engines. Hopefully that's going to go well. That's our alpha test, so it may go nowhere. But
I think you're going to be at Scotts Bluff for the filming of the next Mega Cash Days.
Oh, you guys are?
No, not me.
Who is? I am.
You were.
No. What's this?
Nothing.
No, I'm doing the Terminator dyno. That's basically my whole race car thing all year is going to be all not chasing a lot of drag cars this year. It's going to be all about the Terminator. We may not even get the weather.
I will be up at Dalquist next week for the next couple weeks doing some wiring up there for some cars.
Nice. Very good. Is it who the fuck is typing so loud?
I'll be starting BTR Monday.
Oh, good job. That's right.
Hooray!
That's cool. Congrats on the job. Yeah, it looks like our music has finally showed up. All right, cool. Well, y'all take care. Everybody have a good rest of the week, and maybe we'll touch base next week. I'll at least make a post and let people know how it's going. But if not, we'll see you in 2 weeks for sure. Everybody take care. Peace out.
Aloha.
See ya.